I try to imagine the first time a human felt haunted. Perhaps around the time we were creating language and tools, we also created rituals for the dead, removing the flesh from the bones so they could lie clean in the earth, scattering flowers over a loved one hidden in a sacred cave, speaking aloud the names of the dead, saying goodbye. I imagine an ancestor huddled by the fire, listening to sounds of wild animals in the darkness beyond their fragile little light, feeling lonely and lost. And then a voice. Not a living voice caught on the wind, but the voices of the dead in their mind, a fleeting fragment of memory. Perhaps haunting began with someone wanting, needing one more visit from someone they loved and lost, or with someone fearing just as strongly that a person they killed is coming back for them. I'm not here to tell you that ghosts are real. I'm also not here to tell you that they're not real. I'm here to explore the stories, to follow their evolution from the beginnings of humanity right up to the modern day. For me, the interesting question is not, are ghosts real, but what do ghosts mean? Vubeg, Denmark, 6,000 years ago. Two bodies are laid to rest, a young woman and a baby. The baby died prematurely. The woman may have died during the birth. Let's linger here. It has rained recently, and as the soil is turned, the scent of petrichor rises. The breeze is soft, but contains the first bite of snows to come. The bodies are laid in the ground, tenderly, reverently, cradled in the soft embrace of a swan's wing. The tiny baby at the center, the mother curled around it, the wing curled around them both. The swan can exist on water, on land, and in the air. Perhaps the hope was that its wing would help the dead to fly to the other world, wherever that might be. We've always wrestled with the knowledge that just as others die, so too will we. And we do this wrestling through beliefs in the afterlife and by veneration of the dead. It shows that death was not considered to be the end. If dead bodies were only bodies, there would be no swan wing, no careful burial. What we see in these bones is the preparation of souls for the life beyond. This belief in our humanity existing beyond death is seen across the world in grave goods, including precious objects, food, and ochre paint. But what becomes of the soul in the world beyond? For that, we have stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a poem from 2100 BC. Even in this oldest of tales, there's a ghost. In the final part, the hero, Gilgamesh, complains to his friend and rival, Enkidu, that some of his possessions have fallen down into the underworld. Enkidu offers to go and get them. Gilgamesh is pleased and tells Enkidu that to return from the underworld, he must obey a series of rules. Enkidu listens carefully, proceeds to the underworld, and promptly does everything he was told not to do. So the underworld keeps him. Gilgamesh is devastated and prays to the gods to return his friend. The god Shamash agrees to help by making a crack in the earth, and Enkidu jumps back into the living world, making himself the very first written ghost. Tales of ghosts emerge from every ancient empire. Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Babylonia, the Incan Empire, all have tales of different afterlives for different kinds of people. There are warnings of dangerous wraiths, or promises that revered ancestors could aid us from the beyond, as long as they were kept well fed. But in ancient Egypt, we didn't just write about the dead, we wrote to them, and they responded. A letter from a living husband to his dead wife. I have not garbled a spell before you, while making your name to live upon the earth. I shall lay down offerings for you when the sun's light has risen, and I shall establish an altar for you. Letters to the dead have been found right from the beginnings of the Old Kingdom, around 2600 BC, through to the late period, around 300 BC. Writing to someone in the afterlife was the same as writing to someone in another city. As the dead retained their personality and memories in the afterlife, you'd address your letter to them as you would while they were living. If you had committed no sins and had performed all the rituals properly, then your request would be heard. The dead could respond to you in a dream, through a message, or through a seer. Or you might not see a direct response, but would find your problem suddenly resolved. You might try a more threatening approach, like suggesting that if your request wasn't met, you'd stop the offerings at the tomb. This was a risky tactic. A slighted ghost could be dangerous. The ghosts of ancient Egypt were especially drawn to children. If a ghost came calling, it might place its withered, mummified lips to a child's mouth and suck away its breath. Even if the ghost didn't get that close, the child could be frightened to death at the very sight of it. To ward off these ghostly horrors, mothers made a charm out of lettuce, garlic, straw, bones, and honey. They then sang a lullaby to comfort the child and to chase off any lurking ghosts. O avaunt, ye ghosts of night, nor do my baby harm. Ye may come with steps so light, but I'll thwart you with my charm. In ancient Rome, the power of the dead was taken just as seriously. Multiple holidays were celebrated to appease and exorcise ghosts. Parentalia was a 9-day festival held in honour of the dead, beginning every year on the 13th of February. You'd visit the tombs of your ancestors, leaving offerings of flower garlands, wheat, salt, and bread soaked in wine. Parentalia concluded on the 9th day with the gloomy midnight festival of Feralia. This was a time of placation and exorcism for the more aggressive ghosts. The Roman poet Ovid thought of Feralia as a more rustic, primitive, and ancient affair. In his long poem, Fasti, which translates as the Book of Days, Ovid describes a time when the Romans, preoccupied with war, forgot about Feralia, and the dead were not pleased. In Ovid's words, "The negligence was not unpunished, for 'tis said that from that ominous day Rome grew hot with the funeral fires that burned without the city. They say, though I can hardly think it, that the ancestral souls did issue from the tombs and make their moan in the hours of stilly night. And hideous ghosts, a shadowy throng, they say, did howl about the city streets and the wide fields." The Romans learned their lesson, and after that, they were sure to appease the ghosts on Feralia. There's nowhere in the world without tales of ghosts. Even in continents that were cut off from one another by vast stretches of ocean or uncrossable mountains, tales of the dead were told. Our ancestors shared the same hopes and the same terrors. The Native American Navajo people have lived in the southwestern United States since around 1400 BC. The Navajo believe that when a person dies, all that is good dies with them. What's left, everything bad about the person, everything they failed to bring into harmony with the universe, is gathered together and released with the person's last dying breath. This residual badness forms a ghost called a Chindi. Contact with a Chindi can cause illness and even death. A skilled medicine man could carry out a ritual to get rid of a lurking Chindi. But, if he chose, he could also summon a Chindi to right a wrong for him. A family, the Long Salts, hired a medicine man for a healing, and as payment he requested 5 butchered sheep. The Long Salts did not want to give him 5 sheep. The medicine man was blind, and one of the Long Salts tried to trick him with 5 antelope instead. The medicine man would not be tricked. He called forth a Chindi on the family. One of the Long Salts fell mysteriously ill and soon died. They tried to make amends, but the medicine man died before they could reach a deal. Unfortunately, the Chindi did not die with him. Within a few years, the Chindi hunted down every Long Salt except one, a 16-year-old girl. She escaped with a trader, and for a while they evaded the Chindi. But the winter snows set in and slowed them down. The Chindi, being not of the mortal world, was unaffected by storms and soon caught up with them. The girl died, and the Chindi's vengeance was complete. We have always been haunted. Just as we have lived, we have died, and our ghosts have returned. Across the ancient world, stories of ghosts emerged, and all the stories spoke to one another. No story of life beyond death exists independently of others. The Danish mother and child laid to rest on the swan's wing, the beseeching letters written to the Egyptian dead, the final Long Salt daughter trying to escape a ghost in a snowstorm. These tales are common ancestors for a pantheon of ghost stories that evolved to suit every era and culture. We still have that ancient ancestor within us. We're still staring into the fire, hoping or fearing that something remains of those who have gone. We're still trying to wrap our brains around a universe that doesn't make sense. We may think we're different now. We have different beliefs. We tell different stories. We are haunted by different ghosts. But just as humans change, adapt, and evolve, so do the ghosts.